Morning folks, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. What I thought we'd do this morning is make a little bit of a small loaf of bread or a large biscuit using our 1.4 liter Bushpot. I had some questions yesterday on the video about how do I make bread or a biscuit using that stuff. So I'm going to show you that today. And I also wanted to cover one other thing. You know, like I said, I shoot videos by opportunity a lot of times, and it's not that I want to shoot a lot of infomercial type videos or videos featuring different products, but sometimes it just happens to work out that way as I'm shooting video. I had the stuff from hammockgear.com out here the week before when those guys were out here talking me through some winter camping options, things like that. And the reason I'm looking at that type of ultralight gear is because I'm getting ready to travel to Denmark and Sweden next week for 2 weeks to teach. And as anyone knows, when you travel, especially overseas by air, or anywhere by air for that matter, weight is always a major concern. And I want to conserve the majority of the weight that I have for tools. So I have to cut corners someplace, and if that cutting corners means I have to take ultralight camp gear that's going to get me off the ground, then that's the road I have to take. There's always a place and a time and a design intent for every piece of gear. And expanding my horizons past the traditional, like this canvas hammock with rope clews and oilskin tarp, those things would weigh 15 pounds alone on a 50-pound limit for a bag. So I have to be cognizant of that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to make some of this bread real quick. I'm going to show you how to do that. Our first priority for cooking or baking in general, baking means that we need to build a coal bed. So I've got a fire started in a fire pit over here. I'm going to add some wood to it, get ourselves a good coal bed built up. Then I'm going to show you how to use this 1.4 liter Bushpot, or any Bushpot for that matter, to make a convection type oven. Stay with me. All right, so while we're letting our coals burn down, the one thing we're going to need is we're going to need a plank of wood. And this is just a piece of aspen that was dead fallen. And I've cut it to length and I've split it with my axe and hewed it down a little bit to about 1/4 inch thick. And that's really a little bit thicker than I want, but I just don't feel like messing with it anymore. So the reason for that plank is that plank needs to work as a shelf inside of whatever Bushpot we decide to use for this application. And we can just set that plank right inside the pot, just like this, and it becomes a cooking shelf. And you're going to have convection inside this pot for baking your bread. You could put the lid on there as well to trap some heat in there, and that works out really well. As long as you can get that lid off and place that thing in a position to be able to do that, to see when your bread's done. But it shouldn't take more than about 10 or 15 minutes to cook this. And it's a pretty simple process. What we're going to do is we're just going to take some of our just add water biscuit mix out of our food tin bag here. And carrying food in this manner, stacked in tins in a sleeve like this, a canvas sleeve, was a very traditional way of doing things. There's lots of drawings from old books and scout manuals and things like that that show that configuration of tins to carry food. This is just add water biscuit mix. Like I said, I don't even remember what flavor it is. It's probably 4 cheese or something like that. And I usually wrap it with electrical tape around the edge just to kind of help waterproof it. And I don't mind mixing it right in the tin and just pouring water into the tin to mix it. And I'll show you how that works here in just a minute as well. Okay, so what I do is I just take my tin of flour or mix, whatever I've got there, my just add water, and I make a little divot in there. And then I add water to that divot until it just overflows a little bit. Then I'll just take the back of my spoon and start stirring that in. It doesn't have to be really large, but I do want to collect up all of the water. And you can see this is turning into a ball now, which is what I want. I think I got a leaf in here from the last time I used this. Looks like I'm going to need a little more water in there. And that's just something that you're going to kind of figure out over time how much water you want. You don't want an overabundance of water in there, but you don't want this thing to be too dry either, because in the end, you're going to want to form it into a bit of a loaf. Looks like I got more than one leaf in there from the last time I worked with this meal. Okay. Now you can see we're starting to get something that looks like a loaf of bread here, or a large biscuit, and we'll just kind of mix some of this in off the sides into it to absorb the liquid. And this powder will also help us to not get too much of this sticking to our hands that we have to wash off. And that doesn't have to be a whole lot better than that. That's not too runny at all. That's just about right. And now we're going to want to work it with our hands, but we'll wait to do that until we're ready to put it on the plank itself. So we'll just roll it over on itself, just like that. Keep the powdered parts to the outside, sprinkle a little bit on there. If you need to, you can always use your spoon to do that. I've got a spoon here I can sprinkle the top with, just like this. Flip it over and sprinkle the bottom side. And all this does is just keeps it from sticking to your hands, and also keeps it from sticking to whatever you're cooking in. And I'm just forming a small loaf in there. This tin's just about the right size for that. Just like that. And we'll set that aside for a minute while our coals burn down a little more. Okay, we're getting burnt down good now. And we want to get some coals that are nice and hot and drag them into this keyhole area of our fire. We don't really want the burning sticks, but we want those good hot coals. Get a good pile of them in there, just like that. Let the rest of that burn. We'll use some of that here in a minute. Now we're going to take our loaf here, and we're going to place it on the plank, just like this. And we don't want it to be overly thick, because we don't want it to take too long to cook. So spread that thing out to about the width of your plank in all directions, just like this. Get yourself a good square loaf. Remember, it's going to rise anyway. Shape everything up the way you want it. And once you've got that, then you're going to take your Bushpot. I usually put the handles up so that I can take it off the fire if I want to. Put my lid on the front, just like that. And I'm going to set it right down in those coals with the lid facing forward. And then I'm going to begin to pile coals around it. And if I have to create more coals, I can do that. That's not a difficult thing to do. I can always make more coals in my fire. But the object of the game now is to get the heat surrounding this pot really, really well. The more coals we can get around that pot, the better off we are. And then we just need to be patient. Now we're going to start putting a few little sticks on here, just to kind of keep things going. Keep some coals in there. Keep a little bit of flame, but not too much. So you can see I've built a little bit of a fire layer around it. And that's just to keep the heat in, number one, by piling it up and not letting it breathe so well. But if it flames up a little bit, I can always move things around. Might be getting close. Take a look and see what we got. Okay, we've got most of the smoke gone now, and you can see our loaf is split at the top, which means it's nice and cooked. You can see how there's space between that plank and the bottom that keeps things from burning. It gives us good convection around the sides and on the inside. And you can see how we're buried in that keyhole fire. Let's get this dude out of the fire and see how she looks. All right. Let's get us a stick here and pull this dude out of the fire. Plank might be a little bit warm. Just pull it out onto the ground. We did burn just a little bit around the very back side where we had a little bit too much flame in there. But the rest of the loaf looks really, really good. Set our pot up here to cool. Okay, here's our loaf. Fully cooked and split. Nice and fluffy on the inside. Looks really, really good. Right. Time to sample the goods here. Oh man. Golly. Does that look good? Man, it was 4 cheese. And it's really, really, really good. Nice and fluffy. Good rib sticking food for the trail for sure. Well, guys, I appreciate you joining me out here this morning for this just quick little video on how to bake bread inside of a bush pot using a plank. It's a very simple process, but I wanted to put up a bushcrafty or cooking type video to back up all of these product reviews, if you will, that I've been doing lately, because like I said, it's just coincidental. It's not on purpose, it's just as things come. But I did have a guy ask a question about how to bake a biscuit or bread in this bush pot yesterday using what I had with me and obviously the landscape. So I thought I'd show you that today. I appreciate your views and I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends, and I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.